we're gonna wait another 2 or 3 minutes more before we start. So I just wanted to know if there's any questions, comments so far. No? Anything that it can help you while the other ones get into the session? No? Okay. Well, I guess that's a good sign. Now, my apologies. You will see this class is gonna be heavy in content, and then we might not have that. I might not have the time to go with all of you at the end of the session. I hope we will find the time next class, which is gonna be tomorrow. So today, let's say we're gonna have a lot of content. I need you to be a little bit more independent this session, and then tomorrow we will allocate a little bit more of time for me to go with you, and then we can have like a proper discussions about your advancement so far. I just wanted to let you know as well that this weekend we will have this Saturday, we will have the final presentations. I will give you more explanations tomorrow, but basically groups 1 to 7 will present the first 2 hours, and then group 8 to 14 will present on the next 2 hours, okay? So I guess we are going to start. So remember, the final objective of this second session, the second part, is to reinforce the project that you have done on the first part and take all these possible actions and to develop it better in a proper way. Specifically, you started with Simone to work on a materiality project, right? You have done all your analysis, and then we started to see with the static learning tool how ready your organization is. This is going to give you a lot of insights to see how the implementation can be done. Now, on session 7, we started to see a little bit how an implementation has been changed and how it works and how it's going to be the principles of the CSR governance, right? Specifically, we have seen the case of Unilever. And today, we are going to be which is the kind of tools that we can use in order to improve our CSR and sustainability program. And finally, we will get more inspirations to more class. So this is a little bit the overview where we are. And today's session is going to be focused on CSR standards. Okay, and CSR standard is basically the CSR sustainability tools that we can use in order to improve, in order to accelerate, and in order to open the perspectives of our CSR and sustainability program. Now, specifically for today's objective, I would like you to reinforce your project by adding or adopting different CSR standards that will help you to reach the goals that you have set up with your materiality projects. Okay, now, again, I think I would like to give you more liberty to think out of the box. I'm just giving you more references. It's like entirely up to you. How do you want to configure it? And I know that their instructions are not clear, but this is made on purpose, right? And I think you're still going good and feel all the support. You're going to be supported on those decisions. You're not alone, but I need you to at least try to be more familiar with this associated risk. The only limitation specifically for this session is the time. I have another class at 9, so I really need you to leave you at 9, and then my apologies for this, but as I have said, we will compensate this lack on the next session whenever you have maybe more questions, you have working a little bit more on your presentations, and therefore it might be more useful. So my apologies for this, and I just wanted to start by doing a little bit the discussions with you. I've seen a few things that caught my attention specifically, and that's what I wanted to speak to you about very fast about this article written by Erwin on the Harvard Business Review, who said like why sometimes we take bad decisions, right? And one of these 6 reasons was what we call the analysis paralysis. What is like sometimes now we're exposed on the last 40 years, we have been exposed to 5 times more information. And therefore, there's much more information available that exists. Not all of them are pertinent, but we think they are. And it's really hard to make the difference sometimes. And therefore, we take longer to make a decision. I don't want this to happen to you. Okay, usually you don't need more time. What you need is try to see which one is the pertinent information that you have and work on that information. Don't try to get more, because usually whenever you try to get more, 99% of the time you're just going to get more confused. Okay, there's not going to be any specific magic formula for this. So do not paralyze with this analysis. Try to see which one is important information instead and take your decisions based on this. So again, so I know that sometimes we just want to hear from professors. We want to hear from the websites this magic formula to help us move on with our problems. And guys, there's no such a thing. And if it does, I will be reticent, because not all the formulas applies all the time. So try to just open your scopes and move on and look for the pertinent information. I need you to be more aware and more familiar to take the risk, even things that you don't know, and then you will learn. So how you're going to take this risk? Obviously by creating hypotheses. Sometimes whenever there's a lack of information, try to create reasonable and rational hypotheses, right? And only based on pertinent information. You don't need more time. You just need to concentrate on whatever is important. Knowing that, I just want to make a little recap. What I have seen in Unilever, I think was very interesting, right? How this Paul Polman came and say, I will double the sales by the time that I will reduce the half of our environmental impact. And by the way, I will increase our social impact as well. And that was a huge statement and a very tumultuous time. And I think he kind of succeeded. And there was a specific turning point that I wanted. That's what we did. And a specific emphasis on how he created and communicated this vision. I think it's very important for all the different stakeholders involved in the project that what you want to do, it's clear. And how you effectively communicate it, it will have a great impact on this. So this is one of the examples of Unilever, right? A little bit what I was asking you to do, try to set up the vision for your project. Like in this case, the vision, it was just a combination of the three of them, because they had a powerful slogan, who was doing well by doing good, right? And then the difference with the goals is like you have a specific number in a specific time frame. And this is very important, because if not, there are going to be commitments. It's like a lot of blah, blah, blah. In the moment that you put numbers on it, one, it gives them the more objective point of view, and therefore you have you can start to build all your project back, right? If I would like to get 1 billion in 10 years, how much I need to get in 5, and therefore in 2, 1, tomorrow, today. Therefore, these numbers are going to give you a better insight how to do your roadmap to build up this implementation program. So I think that was a good example. And the second powerful example of Unilever is like how graphically they wanted to include the sustainability plan into the business model. And I think that was incredible, because it's not a thing that we see very often. Then whenever we have the sustainability living plan at the center, and then how it will include it, our brands, your people, and therefore your efficiency on the supply chain. And therefore you can extend the circles until you get a better overview in a kind of a simple way. So it's not only what you want to get, but how you're going to try to get it, right? And I think that was honestly very powerful on the case of Unilever, right? So we have the sustainable living, the brands, operations, our people, right? And that's the core values. And therefore, you start to get cost leverage and efficiency. You start to make innovations into marketing, and then you do innovations per se, and then you start to get more profitable volume that will allow you again to review your cost. So I think this is a great example. I'm not asking you to do it. I'm just saying, like, whenever you can communicate how you're going to plan to get these goals by saying this is what we're going to change in the business model, I think it could be very useful. Now, this is amazing, but guys, let's face it, not all the companies have the same culture, the same conditions, the same resources, and the vision like Unilever did. In that case, how can we foster this change in our companies? How can we just implement these CSR actions that we've been doing analysis for sessions and sessions, right? And one of the hints is like, try to take a look about how you can adopt a CSR standard. And therefore, this might help you to move things faster. So first, why adopting a CSR standard, right? Adopting a CSR standard is not only about legitimacy, right? Whenever you have a certification that says you're a good company, it helps you to legitimate, right? But also helps you to communicate with your different stakeholders about the actions that you're trying to implement to do. So implicitly, one of the main reasons companies adopt a CSR standard is because they want to gain legitimacy externally and internally, right? But it's not the only one. With thanks to some CSR standards, we can just leave these greenwashing things, and it's not only blah, blah, blah. It gets about fostering change inside of the corporations. So it has a lot of benefits to adopt the standard. Obviously, it depends on your conditions, on your business model, on your goals, on your vision, right? But it can increase your performance, right? Not only by reducing cost, but it also can increase the social impact. So performance in a very general way. It's a good way to communicate, right? Whenever you see these bio certification, you say, it's easy. And then there's not a lot of explanations that you need to do to your clients whenever you have this label, right? So it will help you to communicate. Therefore, you are decreasing the legal risk of some things, right? So if you adopt certain type of standards, eventually these standards will become regulation, but you're already protected with this. Another good way to think about the benefits to adopt a CSR standard, like there's gonna give you some insight about how can you measure, and therefore how can you do a better management. It doesn't matter which will be the standard. A common thing that they have is like you're gonna learn. A lot of people, that's a very interesting key feature, because whenever you don't know what to do, you're trying to get some principles done, and therefore in your run to get them, you are going to be learning a lot from these CSR standards, and therefore you can have access to another type of markets, or even increase the market shares that you have already. So there's a lot of benefits to adopt in general a CSR standard, and this is one of the examples of one of the biggest CSR initiatives that exist on the market, that is called the United Nations Global Compact. Can you hear?
No, we can hear.
No.
No, you can't?
No.
Cannot see the movie.
Yes, it's okay.
Okay.
Professor, we cannot see the movie.
You cannot see the movie?
No, it's not move.
Guys, the other ones can see the movie?
Me, I can see.
Yes.
Yes,
Yes,
Working.
we can.
Oh, for me, no.
So I will put it anyway on the slides that are on Teams. You can see the you can see the link, okay? But try to follow. I know you cannot try. Just wait another 40 seconds.
It's not run. Not play.
Okay. In general, it was shown that CSR standards can help you to understand this complex CSR and sustainability world in a different way. And whenever a lot of companies are like adopting this type of standards, they can have a lot of impact on it. So that was the key point. And what happens is, like, usually whenever you don't know about it, you try to see what your competence is doing, right? You start to benchmark them, and then you start to see that they have specific icons. And then you, what is these icons? And then you go on it. Usually whenever there's a leadership on the sector that has adopted a specific CSR standard, then the rest of the sector is going to do it. Okay, so that's why CSR standards are so important, because they allow you to build up your own path to sustainability, right? So the adjacent question is like, what kind of tools we could use to foster the change that we want in our companies? So be careful. Sanya, take a look, because there are going to be a lot of videos that will explain the different standards. So try to set up your adjustments. If not, my advice is to take a look of the recording or the links on the presentations. Okay, guys, my apologies, but you're going to get a lot of information on the next 45 minutes. So please try to pay attention. And if you have any comments or questions, let me know. And I think that will be an interesting conversation. Now, first of all, I would like you, the objectives for this session is going to be, I need you to think what kind of tools we could use to implement the change that your organization needs, right? Which ones are going to be more appropriated, why? And understanding the benefits and the limitation, each standard is the one how you're going to choose it, okay? They're going to be different grades of complexity, and they're going to be different grades of openness from your organization and how mature this materiality issue could be. So I think it could be at least a combination 3 factors that you need to say, like, okay, that's why I think we should adapt this one instead of the other one, but we should take the 2. Okay, so CSR standards, that's a very, very general term. But if we would like to narrow down, we can say that CSR standard is like a set of rules, common, right, and voluntary, that has been decided by one specific type of a stakeholder. Okay, so we're speaking about 2 keywords here, common and voluntary. Those are the only things that are the keyword. Is like this CSR standards, there's no regulation in it. Nothing is going to help. There's no legal sanctions if you adopt the CSR standard. They're completely voluntary, right? And it's what they express the soft law. It's not like the hard law whenever you get legal sanctions, right? So voluntary standards are commonly used as well as soft law. And usually it's a representation of certain type of practices that has been set up by a specific authority, either morally or not. And it's a very umbrella concept that can be speaking about procedure, access, measurements, verification, and how you communicate all these extra financial performance. Whenever I said extra financial performance, I would say social and environmental issues on firms. Okay, so the 2 words, what is a CSR standard? Is something that is common to one of more groups, and it's voluntary, right? And there's no legal sanctions on it. So they're like the 3 main key concepts. Now, One of the only classifications that we have is the lecture that you have on there, what Rush and Waddock 2016, and they speak about like there are at least 4 types of CSR standards. The first one is the principle base, which is an invitation to comply. You know, I'm United Nations and I'm gonna set up 10 principles for every firm to adopt it. And whenever you can sign it, you're able to use our logo, right? Second type of CSR standard, certification, like ISO 9000, like the one that you know, it's about quality, right? They are gonna go with you. There's a specific agent and a specific auditor that's gonna go to your company and verify that you comply all these standards. And if you pass the test, you're gonna get this certification for a certain amount of time. Third tip of CSI standards, reporting. There's a framework for you to report what you have done on CSR and sustainability issues. And the fourth one, it's what they call process standards. It's kind of a certification, but without being a certification. That means this is just gonna be like a guideline for you to understand a little bit better. I'm not gonna tell you what you should do. I'm just telling you this is the description of the best practices that we have found so far. And then you just buy the book and the guide, and that's it, you move on. Okay. Now, specifically, we will go with the principle-based type of CSR standards. On this one, we can have specific principles that will guide participants' behavior, right? And they basically, whenever you just say, yes, I'm gonna be good with these principles and my commitment is to honor these principles, there's no verification behind, okay? Obviously, these standards try to identify who comply them and who doesn't. But in general terms, there's no other sanction or mechanisms to verify what you have done. That is the case of United Nations Global Compact, right? OCDE guidelines for multinational enterprises, or the principles for responsible investment. Whenever you go on their website, it's going to be a series of principles that you need to adopt. And therefore, whenever you did it, you can technically, at least in the case of Global Compact, you can say, I'm a member of the Global Compact. And can has a huge weight on the market, right? Because whenever people, customers, suppliers associate this blue logo, saying like, you know, they're doing interesting things. But let's go a little bit more in deep on what is happening, right? One of the biggest, I think it's the biggest CSR sustainability initiative in the world is this one, United Nations Global Compact. And so far, I think it has 17 different participants, which includes NGOs, cities, associations, schools, and includes today almost 13,000 companies. It's over 160 countries, and they have accumulated almost 80,000 public reports. So it has been a huge initiative that was launched in 2000 by Kofi Annan. And then this is Sanda Ojambo, which is the current CSR leader. So it just got 20 years old. few months ago. And as you have said, as we have seen, it was launched by Kofi Annan. And what I liked whenever he was presenting this on the Davos is he was like, we need to give a human face to the market, right? I know that we use the word face, human face, like a symbolic expression, but we never speak about body, human arms, human spirit, human soul. I think he was specifically using just the word face. Why? We will see that later on, but I think it's really related to the context. 1 year after, Kofi Annan was awarded with the Nobel Peace Prize. So I think just for give you an idea how powerful was this type of declarations 20 years ago when we need to give a human face to the market. I know that today it's more the mainstream, but 20 years ago was something like it was kind of criticized to give a human face and not like try to be performance, right? So that's what I wanted to tell you with this slide. So has been launched a lot of different supporters, and one of the critics that I wanted to tell you is one specific, a very important article that appeared on this United Global literature that it was written by Prakash and Berliner and said like blue washing the firm. So now we're moving into greenwashing whenever you have like these green logos into blue washing. Why? Because the logo of United Nations is very impactful. So it says like, you know, and what they have found on this is like, we have done a study on 3,000 United States companies. And whenever we examine the effects of the Global Compact on specifically on human rights and environmental performance, we have seen the members do worse than non-members on costly and fundamental performance dimensions. That means the one that actually care, members are worse than the other ones. And the ones that are like more easy, more superficial dimension to change, yes, members of the Global Compact are better than the other ones. So I think that was very interesting because it said like, yes, we can change just a little bit, but we're not going to change that much. So that was the first one that I wanted to show you. And then we're moving into the certification. Remember, the first one, it was just principles that you need to adapt, and that's it. Now, we're moving into certification. Certification, it verified all these specific set of practices, behaviors, principles, and measurements. And if you pass it, you're gonna get this certification that you can use in order for you to show it whatever you want, right? And what happens is usually there's a third one that comes and verifies these established criteria that should be kind of common for all the ones that will adopt this certification. And once this procedure has been approved, you can use this image for a specific period of time. And you're gonna have the rights to exploit it on your packaging, on your website, on your vehicles, whatever you want, right? And usually whenever you do not comply all these requirements, usually you will have a time for correct your practices. And if you don't, this certification will be revoked from you. I know that this is the one that we're most exposed to as clients of big companies, right? Like this organic or bio certificate. There's another one that is called Fair Labor Association, that what they want to do a certification for you to treat properly your suppliers. There's another one that is called SA 8000, which is more like a certification about how good you manage internally and you have accountability and management issues, right? We have ISO 14000. ISO 14000 is one specifically ISO that is dedicated to environmental issues. We have the FCC, which is the mark of a responsible forestry that we're going to see a little bit on the next. And then we have a small type of certification, obviously with the ISO family. ISO family has a lot of them. And there's one that is called 20121, which is the certification for you to organize sustainable events. So did you see we can get to something very general to something very specific? And there's one that I would like to speak more about. It is the B Corp certification. I think this is one of the most extensive, pertinent certifications that we have so far. Now, I would like to present a few of them for you to have an overview about what does that mean. Specifically, I would like to start with the one on responsible forestry, right? And why this label matters. It's a label. Did you see how certification is from on the organizational side, but whenever it becomes an image that you can exploit on your website, on your barks, on your products, therefore it becomes kind of a label. So, and this is the case. So let's see what is dealing this certification about it. And did you see here? It's important as well to point out that they have done a partnership with WWF as well. So I think this certification, it's very important if you are working with enterprise like IKEA, and it's not just having it or not. But the question will be, how many of your suppliers count with this certification? How many of them they don't? In which countries this could be more happens to or not? So understanding not just yourself, but all your supply chain, I think it would be very interesting to understand and to map. Now, the second one, it's B Corporation. I think B Corporation, it's one of the most important ones so far. And it was born on United States. And sometimes whenever you have this certification, you can have the right to even have a specific legal figure whenever you mix profits and profits at the same time, and therefore you will have fiscal benefits of it. So it has not as many companies as the other two that we have seen, and there are like 3,800 companies all around the world, right? 74 countries. Did you see? Now we're getting more narrow, but I think it's very interesting, right? And we can find enterprises like Ben and Jerry's, Danone, which is one of the biggest companies that have I think it's the first big company that has been getting awarded with this type of certification, right? And then we have small ones that are like joining this specific certification. What is this certification about? Certification, it's just the first step. This is the website of Danone, by the way. So whenever they explain why B Corp is more than a certification, say like, okay, it's a certification in the first place, but secondly, because they're gonna give to you, they're gonna go and make you an assessment. And I think you need to get 75 over 200 to get certificated, right? So it gives you a vision, right? It's a legal commitment because you might have to change different things on your legal structures. It's a movement and it's unique. It's a movement because there's a lot of enterprise that are helping each other on this specific platform. So I would say, honestly, I'm kind of reluctant with all the certifications. And whenever I saw this movement started to form, I think, there's some hopes on this world. So this is a little explanation. What is the B Corp way? So I think it's very interesting how B Corp is being organized. But did you see? So you get a certification, and then you get access to the platforms, and therefore different actors, and they can help each other. And there's a lot of consultants moving around, so it's a good way, at least, to see how are you going to be certified, and therefore okay, I need to work on my waste management. I need to work on my labor conditions, and therefore, once that you're certified, you have the minimum. There are going to be a lot of different actors that are going to be able to help you. Not necessarily free, but they're going to help you to move on this project. Now, we have seen powerful ones, but we haven't seen, I think, one of the most common certification that exists on the market. And this is the certification, AB certification. That's whenever you have a bioproducts, organic products. And I think it's very interesting to understand what are the benefits, but as well the limitations of it. Right, so this is going to be just a quick introduction about what is behind the certification of bio, because sometimes we just associate this and say, it's going to be good, which is not always the case. But let's start with what are the benefits for this agriculture, bio agriculture. Okay. For the, I'm sorry, there was no video on English so far. So the first thing that they're saying, like, you need to respect a conversion period of 3 years. You cannot just become from bio to non-bio to bio in just in 1 day. So it has to take 3 years for the air to purify itself. Second thing, you need to get no chemic treatment whatsoever, no oil, NGOs, no pesticides or any synthetic things to replace them. And the fertilization has to be in a natural way. Then you have to rotate your crops in order to leave the earth to recover itself. And therefore, you are favorizing the biodiversity inside of the environment of these crops. And how you need to cover your crops to avoid wind erosion. Whenever we speak about animals, we need to limitate how antibiotics treatments they will get. So it's not just no NGOs, it's like a full of different factors that will make all this certification viable. So I think this is one of the most common certifications that we have found right out there, the organic certification, and it's good. And whenever you start to see what is behind how they needed, you needed to wait 3 years in order to convert from non-bio to bio, how you want to do the crops rotation, how you need to treat your animals with non-antibiotics, how you need to protect the crops whenever against wind. And then it's very interesting how everything starts to work there, right? And how people are taking more aware about what they eat. But be careful, because this might be a good solution, but it's not the best one. Eleanor. Yes.
I saw that there is, for having this certification, you need only 25% or something of your ingredients who are natural. Is that right? Or
depends on sorry, Eleanor, so you say like 25% of your
of their ingredients I don't know if I.
Whenever
of
you have
the-
a product made out of different type of ingredients?
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
Okay, that
You need-
depends. For example, the regulation for the baby products, which is a highly regulated industry, I think you need to get at least 75 in order for you to be able to call it a bioproduct. Other ones that are like kind of processed in a different, depends on the process, it can be up to 25, 51, or 75%. So it can change from industry whenever it's there has been product that has been elaborated with different products.
Okay.
Okay. And then another one. So in general, I think this CSR certification, everything is involves about objective measures, right? CO2 emissions, things that you can technically measure easily, right? How much water consumption you're doing it, what is the kilograms of waste management that you need to deal with, what are the amount of electricity that you're using, or what is the amount or the rate of the forested area that you have on your forest. These kind of are kind of easily, but be careful. Whenever you measure something, most of the times, I would say all of the times, you are not measuring anything else. That means these objective measures, they only focus, because it's by nature what they need to do, on a very specific and measurable phase of a big problem. They're usually not perfect, at least no yet. Okay, they are not yet perfect. That's what I'm trying to say. So all of these measurements, they just focus on something, but they forget the rest. And it's hard for us to have a bigger perspective. What I'm trying to say with this, okay, bio and organic products, they looks amazing, right? You are helping the earth to be more natural and recover, try the historical treatment, and you respect these systems. That's amazing. But whenever you just focus on organic, you are not focusing in local, right? And that is the case. There has been one specific article that appeared on Le Monde who was saying like, wait, guys, I think beer is amazing, but be careful with your bio tomatoes on winter time, because a specific part of the south of Spain has been just this, the one that you see is plastic. Why? Because they need to protect the corpse against all this cold, if you wanted to call it this way. So, and there has been not one. If you can see here, everything is white. Everything is white because organic tomatoes in winter is a huge market, and the only one that can do it is in the only one that you can do it has been in Spain. So be careful, because it has contraproducing effects if we just focus on one whenever we just not taking a look of the big pictures. So specifically, it said like there are kilometers of plastics, right? And there's a plastic ocean that is the prolongation of the Mediterranean, right? And nevertheless, we all package all these bioproducts in plastic, and a different type of plastic, because it has to resist these weather conditions. So, okay, they're bio because we don't use pesticides. That doesn't mean that we're respecting the seasonality. We are not respecting the locality. And this is not necessarily a thing that our body might need in wintertime, at least not in Europe. So that was just one example to say, okay, standards are good, but they might be forgetting the big picture. Now, we're moving into, we have seen principle basis, we have seen certification. We're moving into the third family, which is reporting. Usually what these are, these CSR standards are going to give to you is going to give to you a framework for you to report better your social and environmental actions. So specifically for this, it's an effort for you to be more transparent whenever you add to this type of standards, right? And one of the biggest benefits is habilitates the objective comparison of this information by trying to avoid the subjectivity to it, right? Because usually firms can decide what is pertinent to put on the social report. And this was just a chaos. Whenever the first reporting started to launch in the late 90s, you started to see the reports and like you didn't understand a thing. So that's why a global reporting initiative was born, and it started to put some standards on it. And then there's a specific standards whenever you speak about, for example, general disclosures, right? That's why we have GRI 102, right? Whenever you have different management approaches, you have 103, you have economic with the 200, you have environmental with the 300, you have social with the 400. So like there's different ways to present this, and there are different indicators that you can use to present this. Okay, so I think this is the main tool that we use in order to report better and trying to be transparent with our stakeholders is the Global Reporting Initiative. But guys, at least in France, some companies are applied. Why this is important? Okay, in some countries like France, some companies, the ones that have more than 500 employees, they need to make an annual report on extra financial activities. That means the ones regarding social and environmental issues. But the fact is, like, there's no legal sanctions about the content on it. So technically, you can put a report white, available, publicly available, and you're not gonna get any sanctions to it. You say, I have published it. Yes, but what is behind? There's nothing. There's no legislations about the content. It's just the obligation per se. But they are important because this is the only way that we know what enterprise, at least, is the most trustable way, the most common way for us to understand what are they doing. And it's not that there are not going to be any sanctions to it, but at least we know that reporting is important because they are being exposed to the public opinion and third parties like NGOs, journalists, academics like you and me, that we're taking a look of the social reports to see what are they doing. And therefore, they are exposed to the market. If they put things there and they have share a market, they have their shareholders on the market as well, this can affect as well. So they cannot lie, but sometimes they're just trying to hide things. So these type of initiatives are making things easier for us to see what are they doing, right? And sometimes you started to see things really on early 2000, whenever they really needed to do it. We commit to eradicate malnutrition. What does that mean? How this is an action? This might be just a declaration, but anyone can say these things and doesn't mean anything, right? And then we move into something else like, okay, we have planted an enormous amount of trees, and they have seen this beautiful picture that it was not theirs, obviously, with a lot of trees. What does that mean? Imagine that you are Kimberly Clark, that you are doing paper to, that's your business model. And then you say, like, you have planted a lot of them. Yes, but how we don't know that you have deforested a whole country and then you just have planted 2 trees? So there's no way for me to tell if there's no numbers, if there's no years, there's no time frame. It's really hard for me to say, right? The other thing that you could have read on these reports, it's things like, we align our core values and mission with expectations on our future generation, aligning soul enhancing communion. When I was reading this, like, this is a social report, or this is a poem that you can find on a cheap website, right? So I was really, really upset with this. And believe me, whenever you started to take a look of this extra financial reporting, you said, like, guys, I have no idea what are they doing. I have no idea with this. So thanks to initiatives like the GRI, things are getting at least more clear. So their mission is to enable organizations to be transparent, right? That means it's understandable. Like, we can actually read these reports. And these global standards has been creating a common language for organization. That means we're going to enable comparisons between one or another one, which is great, right? And therefore, there are going to be organizations, they need to be transparent and accountable for this. So that means whenever they're being transparent, whenever they can be compared, therefore, they're going to be more responsible for this. So it's like a really win-win situation. It's not a win situation, but technically it's a win-win situation whenever we can understand what they do in an easier way with objective measurements. So it's not just statements, we have measurements, and then we have a time frame. which is very important. So in other words, now for enterprises, whenever they adopt to these CSR standards on reporting, things are getting harder to hide. That means they're not impossible, okay? They're just harder to hide. So what happens, enterprise, they need to do this reporting, right? And they have to make it clear for us to be vigilant on them. And whenever this has been exposed on different stakeholders and they have adapted this type of initiative to be more transparent, it's easier for us to demand action, right? And therefore, if it's easier for us to demand action, at the same time, whenever you're doing these reports inside of the enterprise, you're going to say, wait, now what is my emission on CO2? It's too high, and then I can see the other companies on my sectors. And therefore, I see I need to change these things, and then I can take actions into my enterprise myself. So reporting, it's a key part of the CSR and sustainability world. And this is what GRI, what they do.
I'm sorry, are the video running right now?
Yeah, there's a video. Can you guys see it?
Yeah, I can see it.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So please, the ones that cannot, check your computer because yeah, there's a video running. Okay, I'll put it again. And I think it's great what they're doing because they're not just focusing on big, large companies that they need to report. They also have this platform when basically you just put few information, and thanks to the framework, and they just can give you a report basically done. So I think it was how they converted into a survey form, and they gave you the whole report. I think it's honestly a very powerful tool in order to report easier, to be more transparent, and at the same time to realize what are you doing wrong, and therefore take the management decisions for you to improve inside of your organization. Now, process standards. This is the last family that we have created. So I think before we start with this, is that a good thing if we take just 10 minutes break? Is that okay with you guys? Because the rest is going to be not heavier, but I think we passed the most, but this will take a little while. Is that okay?
Yeah, thank you, sir.
Yeah,
okay,
thank you.
I'll
It's
see you
okay.
here in 10 minutes. See you in a
Yes.
bit. Thank you. Take a break. Hello, guys. Hello, are you still there?
Yes, I'm here.
Yes.
I have received a few.
We are here, sir.
Okay, I have received a few comments about the slides. The slides of the class, I have put them on the Microsoft Teams. You will see that whenever you see files, I have created a folder that says the slides of the second part. So you will find all the 3 sessions that we have had, including this one, on that folder. Okay, so they are there. Okay, Sang, you wanted to say something?
No, Professor, I just want to see the video, but it's not connected yet. So it's okay now.
Okay, so I'm sorry if you couldn't see. I thought it was mine, but when the other ones are able to see it. Anyhow, Sang, if you have any questions whenever we see the presentation, let me know and I'll try to explain to you a little bit. It's just basically introduction to the different standards for you to have an overview about which one, and the implicit question that I would like you to have in mind, like which tools can help my organization to keep learning and moving onto the right path. Okay.
Yes, Professor, thank you. I will try to search some same video on YouTube. So I think it's
yes.
okay.
Now all of them, all of these videos are on YouTube. If you go to the presentation, you will see them, and then the link is there.
Yeah.
And if you need something else, just please let me know, and then we can just discuss. Okay.
Yeah.
Now we're getting into the process standards. I think this is one of the most not common, but I think it helps to understand this complex terminology of CSR, right? Whenever we are building our own enterprises, and then there's a lot of things that you need to take care of, right? Finances, clients, suppliers, regulation, you need to pay taxes, and then your clients or the market is asking you to do CSR issues like, wait, that's too much. So these principles are created on the standard, like we don't know all are experts on CSR like you guys are, but we are learning. And therefore, there has been one specific example that we will see on this one that is called ISO 26000. ISO 26000, it is not a certification. Be careful. ISO 26000 is not a certification. It's a guidance on how to understand key terms associated with CSR and sustainability. It has a very funny story because ISO, AFNOR, the organization behind ISO, they wanted to create that certification for responsible enterprises, right? And they just have launched these huge type of congresses whenever there are a lot of specialists. And then we started to discuss a little bit what it should be, what it should not be. And at the end, ISO, AFNOR said, like, guys, we cannot make a certification because this is too complicated. And this depends on a lot of factors and it changes from sector to sector. Therefore, in order for us to still take advantage of all these efforts, we're gonna to publish a guidance to make enterprises and people to understand better what is CSR. And that's what they did. So they're not related with performance, right? Even they speak about specific indicators that we can use in order to measure these CSR issues. Is not really related to performance. It's more about practices, it's about key terminology. And ISO 26000 defines the key terms to understand, apply, and build these all competencies around this CSR and also to communicate it better. So I think it's very specific, but it helps a lot. ISO 26000 is, it says, a popular standard because it's not a certification, right? And it provides guidance to recognize the respect for society and environmental as critical success factor, as we have seen it before. So this is just like an institutionalization for one of the biggest actors on the certification world. And this is, again, Sang, sorry, but this is a little video whenever we're going to explore the principles of ISO 26000. I know that you didn't say anything, but I wanted you to say like how you turn ideas into actions. I think could be one of the slogans of ISO 26000. And specifically, whenever you start to look for the classification that they do, I think it's very, very interesting because we have at the center the governance. These are like the different pillars of what CSR is for ISO 26000. And at the very center, the first thing that we see is organization. And what is specifically the governance of it. This is how everything is constructed, coordinated, and whenever we allocate resources to make things happen. Right? We decide the principles, the politics that will get a regulation in the whole organization, and therefore we can allocate resources from there. Everything starts to see on the organizational governance, right? And this is on the center. And now this is 6.2. And they call it a holistic approach. Why? Because in 6.3, the first thing that you look at, human rights, right? Human rights not only for your workers, but also for the suppliers, right? So you need to respect that all human rights are well respected in all the different, with all your stakeholders. Second thing, labor practices, right? These are the principles that stay there, has been taken from the ILO, International Labor Organization. So most of these are quite related, but they go a little bit beyond by you taking care of your own employees. 6.5, environment. A little bit what we have seen with ISO 14000 and the Forestry Stewardship Council. This is everything related with water consumption, waste management, use electricity. All these type of indicators are there, and this is a way to understand CSR. 6.6, fair operating practices. This is very interesting because it goes against one thing, against corruption, and the other one against monopolistic practices. So here you have another pillar of the CSR. Whenever you need to deal with all these issues, right? You need to do fair operating practices, specifically taking care of not doing monopolistic practices, right? 6.7, customers. Customers are very important for us as well. We need to take care of, right? It's not just giving them high quality products, right? But how you're gonna communicate the possible dangers of your products. What are you gonna do after it doesn't work? What is the type of warranties? What is the type of things that you need to take care of whenever the product has been ended, right? And 6.8, it speaks about community involvement and development. This is what is the type of philanthropic actions that you can do rather than just your normal operations, how much you are involved in a geographical context with the people that lives around you. So I think it's very interesting how they have organized these 7 pillars. This is way different, and the approach that you have seen on the first or the second session with Simone, whenever you guys speak about the stakeholder theory. The stakeholder theory in materiality involves a specific group of actors that has been impacted or can impact the organization, right? And sometimes we think CSR as the stakeholder satisfaction. This is a total opposite approach. We will take care of governance, human rights, labor practices, environment, operating practices, consumer issues, community involvement. Now, there has been some limitations to this. For example, where is our suppliers? They fall into different ones, but I think suppliers is one of the key factors to understand CSR, and ISO 26000 doesn't take them in consideration. The ones on anti-corruption, I think it can have, it's very related with operating practices, but it's not really clear in there. So the first observation to ISO 26000 is like, even it's very complete, there might be missing some issues specifically with suppliers and anti-corruption. Second thing, which I think it's more important, it doesn't have a stakeholder satisfaction approach, right? Which can be complemented with this, but it's not a supplement. Nevertheless, I think it's one of the most, if you would like to understand better CSR, I think this is a key document that you need to understand how ISO 26000 works. Guys, do you have any question on this? Because I think ISO 26000 is a understanding key point for the CSR and sustainability issues. Okay, are you still there?
Yes, no question. It's okay.
Thank you, Lois. I appreciate your. Okay, now, guys, in general, we have seen 4 types of certification standards. The first one is principle-based, and it's how it was just defined. Either like an institution set up certain type of principles that the participants need to honor, right? They try to guide the participants' behavior thanks to these principles, and they do not include verification, right? Second thing, certification. Whenever you have comply a set of procedures, standard, and practices, therefore you can have this seal for a specific period of time. And whenever you cannot correct these issues, you're going to be revoked. Third thing, reporting. It's a framework to transparency whenever we can abilitate the comparisons of information that has been disclosed for firms. And it's kind of okay, firms, they don't have to always to decide what's going to be there. We also, as stakeholders, we can ask them what it should be there. Fourth thing, process standards. It's just guidance to better understand how CSR terminology could be applied into your organization. So in general, we have these 4. I would say the 5th one that is not mentioned, it can be alliances. There's a lot of alliances that has been done in a specific type of different parts of the world, right? And thanks to this, there's just exchange thing. It will be kind of neither one or the other one. Is like me helping you a little bit what we have seen with the B Corp corporations, but without passing a B Corp. They're like just, we work on the same sector, we work on the same city. Why not we just sit down and just exchange about our best practices? Be careful. Now we're getting into the limits of these standards. And sometimes we can see that there are like possible overlaps. The case of ISO 14000, we have seen that is a certification. That is amazing, right? But ISO 14000 is also, whenever you start to read the procedures and what they need to respect, the type of indicators, it can also be considered like a process standard because it helps to understand the CSR issues, specifically on the case of environment. Whenever you understand better these concepts and this terminology and how this can be applied to your organization, at the same time, you know what is important to report. So indirectly can be understood also as a tool to better report. And whenever you understand what is better, you understand what is the main meaning of this ISO 14000, you understand the principles, and therefore indirectly, it can be also a principle-based certification. Did you see? This is just a classification that we use in order for us to express what is the possible benefits and limitation of it. That doesn't mean that it's just the only classification that exists and the only one that actually matters. There's no formulas here. It's just to tell you what is the main characteristics of one and try to find the similarities on this. Now, this the first overlaps is fine, but there might be more problems and limitations with all these CSR standards on the market. One of the first one is like, we have a tons of different multiple CSR standards, right? And some standards can have similar objectives. Therefore, these might be contraproducent in order for us to create a good private regulation. If there's no government help on this, there's going to be a lot of standards. And the first thing is like, we're going to get lost. And the second one is like, they can be in conflict to each other. So the analogy that I would like to use in this case is like, whenever you have a bus, right? There's only one bus in the city. It helps, right? Because you don't have to think a lot of things. There's the only one, and then you just, you know, at what time it passes, what would be the capacity, you know how much it costs, and then you just jump in and effectively it moves from one point to another. That's a good idea. The buses are a good idea. But then the market starts to see, you know, I don't want to take this bus at 1 p.m. I would like to take it at 1:15. And there has been a proliferation of different buses on the city until you get something that is really messy, right? At the same time, you want to take a bus, and then you need to write a guidance, right? You need to make and you need to be educated to understand which buses you can take that is going to take you wherever you want. This could be an advantage, right? But at first glance, it could be like, why? There's like too many of them. And whenever I say too many of them, I think there are like at this day around 300 different CS standards in the world. Now, we have seen it. Now, again, I don't want you to get on this analysis paralysis, right? But whenever you type into the sustainabilitymap.org, and then you start to see they have done a great effort to understand all the different CSR standards that exist on the market. And they have a pledge to be the most comprehensive and verified and transparent information about the standards. But whenever you start to look at them, you have 297 of them. So be careful. I don't want you to get paralyzed with this analysis. I think I've shown you the most popular ones, the ones that I think are most effective. But if you would like to know specifically which type of CSR standard are in a specific country, go for it. In a specific region, go for it. And a specific sector, go for it. Right? So there are like a lot of them that I maybe I didn't see, or I didn't say them all. So I just have shown you the most popular ones, or the ones that my research is best familiar with. So in general, the limits, there are like a lot of them. First, it can be confusing, not only for you, but also for your suppliers, for all the stakeholders. Secondly, it can increment your operation cost. Obviously, these standards, they come with a cost, and a few of them are free, but most of them are payable because they have an interest. And most of them, this interest, it goes rather than just political, environmental, or social. It goes into the financial interest. Okay. Third, there can be some efforts that are like attacking exactly the same thing. And one of it might be saying like, no, this is not a good standard. No, I am a better standard than you. And there's also this problem of cannibalizing CSR standards. Fourth thing, usually it's good to understand where this imposition come from, because as well, there are a lot of financial interest on play. So it might look like a good certification, but at the end, what they want, this group, is for them to sell you their product. So be careful of that, because it can be seen as an imposition of a specific group. Yes, Sang, you wanted to say something?
No.
Okay.
That's it.
Now, the fifth one. As we have seen it with Berlin and our practice, whenever I was showing you the United Nations Global Compact and the blue washing, one of the critics is like, firms can adopt these standards just in a very superficial way. Firms will always would like to invest the least amount possible to get the maximum returns, right? So, and the same happens in the world for standards. So be careful with this. 7, in the case of certifications, whenever there's an auditor that goes there and take a look about how good you comply with all these procedures and standards, there's this possibility of corruption. So auditors are not perfect. Even they have to follow a specific deontology. We have shown cases that doesn't exist. And the moment that you start to make things more complex, there's always a way for actors to find a way not doing it by doing the least superficial way, which is doing a little bit of corruption with auditors. So there's always this probability. And whenever you are asking to your suppliers, okay, you need to get this certification, this certification, this certification, this certification, and they're like just incrementing cost, and it's not aligning with the vision of the supplier, sometimes these suppliers might decide just to move on to a different country and say like, you know, this has been an amazing road with you guys, but I'm going to move to another country whenever I don't have this amount of regulations and I can operate easily. So this could be one of the limits. I didn't say them all. I just have said the most important ones. Obviously, remember the ones that they just take a look at a specific phase of the problem. They don't see the whole picture. Now, do they worth it or not? All these limitations between confusing, increasing costs, imposition, superficial adoption, a possibility of corruption, a possibility for providers to change from world to world, versus increasing performance, increment communications, protect yourself versus future legal risk, help to measurement management. It's a learning tool, and therefore you can have access to market share. Does it worth it or not? Guys, again, there's not a clear formula on this. This is just a recent research because we have lived in a world when never the last 10 years has been launched we have seen an amazing creation of different CSR and sustainability standards for us to understand better. That doesn't mean that it's going to clear for everyone or it's going to be adapted to your organization. Do you have any questions on these benefits and limitations? Would you like to react on this? No?
No, it's clear.
Okay. Now, nevertheless, the only thing that it's for sure is that CSR standards are a very powerful learning tool. Whenever you don't have any idea what to do, my advice is like start to see for the most easiest CSR standards, like global compact. That's what so many companies are in there. And then from that, you start to move in more complex one, like ISO 14000. Whenever you get these ones, you might get into more complex one, like ISO 26000. Did you see? You're just incrementing. And one of my research is trying to see what is the CSR standards that organizations have built in first place, how much they stay there. And that's a little bit what I wanted to share with you. So do you remember a little bit the learning tool that we have seen with SABIC? I think this is exactly whenever I wanted to do the link, because you might be on a very defensive, on a very latent stage. So therefore, what do you think it would be the best CSR standard to adopt in order for you to move on? Again, I think one of the first and the easiest one to get is either the United Nations Global Compact or the OECD the guideline for multinational companies. I think these are the first two that you need to start to look at them. Obviously, we have the ones on ILO, the International Labour Organization, and that this will give you an oversight, and then you start to move on complexity and depending on your sector. Now, specifically, we have seen that they has benefits, but we haven't proved their impact. There has been just few research about, because it's a emerging type of tools that we are living, and therefore we cannot necessarily size how impactful they could be. Are they effective, these CSR standards, or not? And I would like to show you a little bit of my research, specifically with Simone, about the case of the United Nations Global Compact. As we have seen it, it's one of the largest CSR initiatives in the world, whenever we have 6,000 organizations and we have 12,000 companies all over the world. Okay, that is amazing, but are they effective or not? Guys, let's start by the beginning. These are the 10 principles that the Global Compact is proposing, right? First one, it's the first two, it's about human rights. The first four, it's about labors, right? When you should give them the freedom of association. We have eliminated all these forms of compulsory labor, effective abolition of child labor, elimination of discrimination at work. Did you see? There's like basic human and labor rights. 7, 8, or 9, and specifically dedicated to environment. Whenever we need to have a precautionary approach to environmental challenges, to understand and promote greater environmental responsibility, and encourage the diffusion of environmental friendly technologies. 10 is just for corruption. Eloise. Yes.
Yes, I just have one question. I don't know what is UNGC. Can you explain it?
United Nations Global Compact. This is one of the first CSR standards that we have seen. Remember this little logo?
Okay.
I'm sorry, yes. It should have been more clear, but it's United Nations because it was launched by United Nations, and Global Compact. Global Compact is like, on French, it's translated like the Pacte Mondial.
Okay.
Okay.
Yes.
So as you have seen, these 10 principles are quite simple. It's nothing complicated, right? But the point is not just these 10 principles, but how you're gonna make a policy inside of your organization that will respect this one. So even it looks simple, it might not be as simple as it looks. Now, what specifically what I have done, I have mixed the database of the Global Compact, and to understand how we can measure the CSR performance, I have used the database of an extra financial agency that is called Vigeo Eiris. Vigeo Eiris, it's the largest European extra financial rating agency that was acquired by Moody's. And they have a robust methodology whenever at the end of their analysis, it will be shown from 0 to 100, how good is your CSR performance. So what I've done is like I've put the two databases together, and thanks by the name, I have matched something like 7,000 companies on 17 years observation. So it's a huge database. And the first thing that we can see is that the blue ones are the active members and the green ones are the non-members. I don't know why we cannot see it quite good, but I can see by different years how always active members have been getting higher CSR performance. So even it looks simple, this is the first time that has been shown in the literature that the Global Compact might have something to do with better CSR performance. The difference between active members to the Global Compact, to the UNGC, and the non-members of the UNGC, it's 32%. So it's a huge difference, the ones the members display against the non-members. So by the first one, we start to have some hints how that the Global Compact has been a little bit effective on this side. On the other side, thanks to a linear regression, we can see that the members have a positive slope. What does that mean? They're doing more efforts year after year, right? And the funny thing is like non-members of the Global Compact are getting worse and worse. So they are doing less and less. So this is gonna give us great insights about, yes, Global Compact can be effective on terms of CSR performance. That means whenever you sign, you're more committed. So, and sometimes it's not signing or not. As other authors have said it, the longer that you stay, the better you will see these results. So it's not a thing that you just sign and that's it. Because whenever you sign, you're part of the Global Compact, and therefore you have access to what they call the local networks. Local networks is whenever you're gonna sit down with another enterprises to exchange what are the best practices that you have lived on this side, and then you start to learn a little bit. And eventually this patience pays off because you're gonna create a huge difference like if you wouldn't be, which is about 30%. Now, what happens with the members before they sign and after they have signed? And that was funny because I rearranged the time, right? It was not just linear years. Now I was created a single event baseline. So year series whenever they have signed, and I can see that everything every year has been positive. That means it's a good sign even before you have signed. And what we have seen whenever I split the bases, what happens before and what happens after, I found something that is interesting, which is enterprises, they make more efforts before signing the Global Compact than after. And they do the double. So before you're going to sign, you make more efforts. Once that you sign, it's kind of you relax. And specifically what happens is like after the first year, immediately after the first year, if we make a zoom on it, there's a drop on your CSR performance. And this is kind of tricky. So you just signed, you were making great efforts. You signed the Global Compact, you tried to put it into your practices, and then it's like you don't do anything else for a while, right? So it's like you've been working really hard to achieve a goal, you get the goal, and what happens immediately? You just relax. Well, the same happens for these enterprises. So even they can be effective on the long run, whenever you achieve a CSR standard, there's a high probability that for a while you're gonna be doing nothing, right? You even decrease your performance. And this is what Simone and I have conceived like symbolic surrogation. And what is this symbolic surrogation? It's like, it's always, obviously it's a tentative definition because it's a work in progress, but it's the tendency to mentally replace our efforts with well-established symbols for corporate responsibility. So sometimes we want to just get a lot of symbols, and that means that we're losing a little bit where our main objective was. We're not going to necessarily be more CSR and sustainability performant, rather than we would like to get a bunch of symbols that the market would recognize, which is the case of the Global Compact. So again, I think this is obviously one of our latest research. Guys, CSR standards, they can have a lot of limitations, and we can have a lot of benefits. Sometimes it's not about the standard. Sometimes it's about how ready your organization could be, how important your material project could be for the organization, right? How good you communicate this vision. The only thing for sure that CSR standards are going to be good for is because you're going to learn a lot of things. So whenever you adopt one of it, there's a learning process. And this is whenever it gets interesting. It's just the learning issues beside. It can be a learning platform. So the dynamic for today. I need you to first understand which CSR standards your company has adapted so far. In which extent, for how many years. They have been using the United Nations Global Compact since 2014. Why do you think it happens? Right? We are IKEA, and then we are applying. It's not you. It can be your suppliers, right? Your suppliers, the suppliers of IKEA, have been adopted this FSC certification since 2014. Yes, and why? And then, what other CS standard might be very suitable to include, and why? And this is just a dynamic. I'm not asking you to go over the 300 standards that we have seen. Take a look of what happens. Take a look of maybe the most important ones and see if they have been adopting this or not. Because CSR standards are going to be a great learning tool. And secondly, it would be a great way to communicate with our stakeholders our implementation plan. One of our goals is to be B Corp certified on the next 5 years. This is a specific goal that is going to help you a lot to get legitimacy on the market, thanks to the support of your clients, the support of your suppliers, and therefore possibly the support of your employees and the support of your shareholders. So it can be a game changer whenever you adopt a CSR standard. Guys, is there any questions or comments? No?
Yes, sir. I have a question.
Yes, Colleen.
Like, I don't really understand like how like the responsible of standard, I don't know, let's like the responsible of CSR standard control like the companies, how they achieve something. Like the company, if the company achieve like one standard, like she told it to the CSR responsible. I don't really understand the
impact.
Not the impact, but how like if they sign like to, for example, like companies make some good things like in I don't know how to explain. I'm sorry.
No worries, Colleen. Let's do something. Reflect about the question, and then if I don't go with you, put it on the chat, and I will try to answer it before I go.
Okay.
Is that okay?
Okay. Sorry.
But no, no. It's please feel this is completely normal. I have given you a lot of information today, and this is the type of reflection that I would like to do. How these might make sense in my own opinion. So please, Colleen, take as much time as you want. Put it on the chat, and if I have time, I'll go with you, and at least I'm gonna write it back. Okay.
Okay. Thank you.
Ronan.
Yes.
Ronan.
It's just about the precision according to your graph with the with the before and the after signature. I just want to ask if after the signature, is it really a drop or a behavior of satisfaction, or this is a natural trend? Because as I have did a lot of efforts, I was wondering if it's not natural that they are trying to stabilize, as this effort implies to do many things, etc. I don't know if it's clear.
So you're saying like adopting the UNGC might affect the restructuration at that given time?
Yeah.
It could be possible. This is one of the hypotheses that we have. Either you have achieved a specific goal, and therefore I'm the director of finance. Okay, you achieved this goal, and then as far as you don't have anything else to do, I will give you less budget for next year until you propose me something new. Or I have just achieved and I'm just refreshing myself out like in the beach. Third thing, it's the reimplementation of new programs that will redirect the whole CSR performance. Yes, this is one of the hypotheses that we have, and that's why I didn't say them all, because thank you for this comment, first of all. Secondly, we need to make some specific interviews about the enterprises that are having this drop down. And then, but there's a possible reinterpretation of the whole strategy, because how you're going to adapt these 10 principles into your politics might affect. And obviously, you're not going to see results the first year. You need to wait. But usually, these results, whenever you wait at least 2 years, are going to be better than if you wouldn't have done anything. But yeah, that's a possible restructuration.
Okay, thanks.
No, thanks to you. That was interesting, of the principles on the, I'm writing it, on the politics. Good. Very good comment, Funan. Guys, any other questions about before you guys start?
Excuse me, sir, I have a question.
Yes, Antoine.
Concerning the last slide, which CSR standards has your company adopted so far? Are you talking about one of the 4 categories, like principle-based certification, reporting,
exactly.
standards?
Any one of them is for you to understand a little bit what are they interested in. Obviously, Antoine, one of the biggest things is like it's not going to be easy to find, because it's a thing that you're going to see on the report, and there's no specific part of the report when I say these are the standards that we get. Usually you will see it very fast, but usually it takes time. Now, it will be very interesting to see how you can foster, because you're proposing a project, right? You see how open your organization has been. You have seen how you can try to implement this vision. Therefore, which is the type of tools that will help you to get there, right?
Okay. So we don't have really to find what our company is doing with CSR standard, but more what we will do with that CSR to implement its CSR and sustainability strategy.
I would say it's a little bit of the two. Of course, you need to imagine if they have, or they already have the B Corp certification, then it's going to be senseless for you to propose to adopt the global compact, which is a really easy one, right? So I would say it depending on your organization, the type of standards that you would say these standards are going to be adequate because of these reasons.
Okay.
Okay. Good question. Any other question, guys?
Excuse me, Professor. Can you upload this to the Canvas that we can follow it to do the homework? Because after that we can forget everything, but we don't see the presentation. Yeah.
Sang, I've put it on the Canvas. I have some issues to upload things, so I put it on the Microsoft Teams. Whenever you go to Files, there's a specific folder that says Slides, and these slides are already there.
Oh, we don't see it in here. We just have a record.
No. It has a file. So whenever you leave, you go on Files on the Microsoft Teams, the group, the general one, Files, and then there's going to be a folder.
Mm-hmm.
And I'll try to see what can I do with Canvas thing to upload it as well.
Yes, you can. It's easier for all of us.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you.
Another question, guys?
Yes, I have one question about blue washing.
Yes, Alex, please.
Is it because it's the first time that I hear this concept, this term, and is it always related with the United Nations Global Compact principles?
Yes, in this case it is. And why? Because the logo of the Global Compact is blue. So that's why they have said that. That's the only thing. And wait, let me find it. Yes, did you see the globo? The globo. The logo is blue. So that says like they were making type of obviously playing with this terminology of greenwashing. And as far as the United Nations logo is blue and it's very powerful, how enterprises were taking advantage of this blue washing, and specifically for the Global Compact.
Okay, thank you.
No worries. Any other question, guys? You always have good question. That's why so I would like to propose you something. As far as we're not going to have a lot of time to work individually this session, my advice, no, that's it. We're going to work on this. And now I have like 3-4 minutes to pass with all of you, but we need to finish in 1 hour, okay? So that's it for the lecture. The slides are there. Go and work on which standards might help you to move on onto the implementation. Remember, what we have done is like we see how open our organization is. Therefore, we started to set up a clear vision what we want to do. Now it's like which type of tools are going to help us to move on what we are going to we wanted to propose on the first part. So I'll close this session and I'll go and start to pass with all of you on random selection, because the first we started from the first to the last, second session started last, and now I'll start with the middle. Okay, so I'll see you in a bit. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you, Professor.